Have you ever looked at things differently than others? Perhaps little things, like being the unpopular decision in a group of friends, deciding on where to go out for food. Maybe it's those moments where you show belief in things others don't, but tragically, those beliefs are hidden deep within, never to resurface for the sake of protecting whatever it is we find worth protecting. Our journey begins with a young man by the name of Christopher McCandless. He spent the last 2 years of his life traveling nomadically, trying to live to the fullest he possibly could. Along the journey, McCandless encountered many people, befriending nearly all of them. At the start of his expedition, in the summer of 1991, just after graduating Emory College, McCandless donated the remaining $20,000 in his bank account to Oxfam, an organization built to ending world hunger. This was followed by McCandless taking his old Datsun car directly west. It was later found abandoned in Detrital Wash, Arizona. He soon stopped using his name given at birth and changed it to Alex Supertramp. The majority of Alex's travels were covered through hitchhiking, the method that caused him to meet all his soon-to-be friends. On the road, Alex met Jan Burrs, a rubber tramp who grew an instant liking towards him. After parting ways, he then hitched a ride with Wayne Westerberg. Throughout their travels, Wayne found out that Alex was in need of money and offered him a job at his grain elevator in Carthage, South Dakota. What was your experience with Chris McCandless like?
Chris McCandless? Well, I met him a while back in South Dakota. He was a hitchhiker back then, so I gave him a ride, and we talked for a bit, and he said he needed money, so I decided to give him a job. We went to South Dakota, and that's where we worked, and he took all the bad jobs, so I knew, I needed to keep him. He was a good worker, too. He always talked about going to Alaska. I always try to talk him out of it. He wouldn't budge, stubborn kid, but he's very charming. He's very hard to not like. One of the greatest workers I've ever had. After a few months of working with him, I got caught by the police for selling black boxes, and I went to jail for a few years. I got out, never saw him again. I only got postcards from him. It's the last I saw.
After Alex's job at Westerberg's grain elevator, he impulsively bought a canoe in a small town in Arizona. Alex rowed the canoe down a river straight towards Mexico, where he crossed the border secretly. Alex was hoping to reach the Gulf Coast, but was blocked by many swamps in his path. Dragging the canoe was proved to be a huge struggle. Fortunately, he is offered a ride by some local Mexicans towards a better portion of water. Soon afterwards, the canoe was abandoned and Alex attempted to sneak back into America. However, he is caught by the border police. They allow him entry back in, but he is confiscated of a handgun that he held at the time. Alex later meets up again with Jan Burrs in an old Navy airbase known as the Slabs, where he helped run their book stand. He soon leaves with itchy feet to head off to Alaska. On his way to Alaska, Alex had met a retired war veteran named Ronald Franz in Salton City, California. They had quickly grown close and had even delayed Alex's plans towards Alaska.
McCandless was single-handedly the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I remember McCandless. I loved him like a son. When I was younger, I was stationed in Vietnam during the war and I lost my family in a car crash. McCandless felt like he filled the hole in my heart where my son and wife once was. I did not want McCandless to leave for Alaska. I tried to talk him out of it many times, but he seemed very content on going. Before he left, I asked him if I could adopt him and continue my family name, only name. But he did not seem to like it. It was very awkward. He seemed very weirded out by the request. I understand that. People say that about me a lot. Before he left, he taught me one very important lesson, and that's to live life to the fullest. So I heeded his advice, and I lived where one of his abandoned campsites was, waiting for his return from Alaska. However, I found out that he had died, and once I had figured that out, I had renounced my faith towards God, and I am now on the bottle again.
Alex parted with Ronald Franz and resumed work with Wayne Westerberg. He stayed there for a short time and then went on to Fairbanks, Alaska, which involved a lot of difficult hiking. However, he finally arrived at Stampede Trail on April 28, 1992. When Alex crossed the Teklanika River, as Krakauer describes, he crossed the Rubicon, meaning that this was truly the point in time for McCandless when there was no turning back toward civilization and living. McCandless had finally arrived at the bus where he would eventually meet his end. After 6 good weeks of hunting, he managed to kill a moose. Unfortunately, he was unable to preserve any of the meat despite his best efforts. McCandless described this in his journal as the greatest tragedy of his life. McCandless, after months in Alaska, decided to finally return to civilization. However, upon return to the Teklanika River in the summer, he found it to be much larger than before and uncrossable. McCandless knew that he was stranded in the wild and then returned to the bus. McCandless survived for a few weeks by hunting small animals and eating potato roots. However, in late July, the roots became more and more inedible, so he switched over to the seeds of the plants. Unbeknownst to him, the seeds were covered in a mold alkaloid that made him unable to obtain nutrients and also paralyzed him. Upon waking up the next morning, McCandless found himself incredibly weak and nauseous, and he was unable to move, walk, or pretty much do anything. It soon began to show on Chris McCandless's physical appearance that he was starving and extremely malnourished. McCandless then entered the sleeping bag that his mother had given him, and he wrote off his final words before slowly passing away from starvation.